Good morning, all. Welcome to day 5 of the Now Women's Summit. My name is Faith in the City, and I have the pleasure of hosting 4 incredibly talented women on today's Women, Tech and Engineering panel. So for those that are watching from home, welcome again. I'm pretty sure most of us have been caught up with the great things that have been going on the Women of the City Now Women's Summit platform over the last week. But as I was saying to the guests that we have on today, I'm particularly privileged for this panel simply because I am someone who has followed the women in industry trends for over a decade. I myself having started a little society when I was at university called Women in Business and Law, just again as another avenue to try and usher in some change into what we see in the world around us today. The women that I have with me today have all done really amazing things in their own fields, in their own right, within the industry of technology and engineering. And today, the aim of this session is to delve a little bit deeper around the concept of choosing to challenge some of the inequality that we see around us today, discussing what's working, what has worked for various companies. We've got Debra, who is the CEO of Novacroft, with us today. We'll be hearing from her some of the things and the work that she's done, and hopefully we can all gain insight regardless of whether you are just starting up in industry. Maybe you've never even thought about a career in technology or engineering. We're hoping that some of these conversations will gear us up for the next decade and even more. So good morning all, welcome again. And I will briefly introduce who we have on with us today. And then if you don't mind, I will kick off with my questions because I really just want to hear from the ladies that are on this morning. So as mentioned, first of all, we have Debra, who is CEO and founder of Novacroft. For those who don't know, I did a bit of research. Novacroft actually are behind what most of London use today, the simple little smart card, what we call the Oyster card, which is a brilliant piece of technology. You can't imagine leaving your home without that. So really privileged and honoured to have you with us, Debra. I've also got Mandy Tucker, who is a certified executive career coach, leadership strategist for women, but also working and doing great things in the IT sector as well. Welcome, Mandy. Joined with that, I've got Holly Brockwell, who is a freelance technology journalist. I've read some of Holly's pieces, really engaging, really thought-provoking. So if you don't already know Holly, I encourage everyone to follow and go read some of her work. And last but definitely not least, we have with us Cecilia Harvey, who is doing great things in the tech space, a technology executive, author and entrepreneur, and founder of Tech Women Today, amongst many other things. So welcome to you all. I have prepared some questions, but before we go into the questions, just something for our audience to bear in mind. So this summit, as we may all have seen in the industry and social media in particular, we're marking, International Women's Day, which was on Monday, the 8th of March. And there was this concept about women and men everywhere rising up and choosing to challenge some of the things that we see day to day, whether that's in the workplace, whether that's, as you're walking home from the shop or your friend's house, whether that's in relationships and friendships, and using the power of our voice, yes, as individuals, but actually coming together as a force. And, brands and companies have taken to social media to show that they're behind, this theme and this week, and marking it with various, concepts and social media campaigns and giveaways. There's so much out there, right? But actually, I was having a discussion on LinkedIn about what happens after the hashtags, call it life after the hashtag, when it's all died down. We've seen various things, Black Lives Matter, and many other things, be kind, but actually how effective are some of these in actually driving real change that impacts your everyday woman? So hopefully those are some of the things that we will begin to answer and unpick in today's conversation. With that in mind, I pulled together some statistics for the industry, for those who may be interested. And a report says here that men continue to dominate the STEM workforce in many countries. Historically, technology companies have lacked gender diversity on their boards. There's been some increase. So in 2018, there was about 15% representation, and that's gone up by 3% within a year. So there is some improvement and progress there. But, what can we be doing to speed that up in some cases? Which leads me to my first question. And I'm going to direct that to Debra, and that is, you have been CEO and founder of Novacroft over the years. How have you, in your position, challenged yourself to ensure that your boardroom and senior leadership takes steps towards gender equality? Oh, you're on mute there, Debra.
There we go.
Perfect.
That's such a great question. And for me, it's nothing to do with being a challenge. It's actually a necessity. And, over the last year, it's been really noticeable that if we don't embrace diversity, we won't be here. And it's so important as we move towards the fourth industrial revolution. We need diversity in all its form, and not forgetting neurodiversity, for instance. It's being creative and adaptable, and unless we have diverse thinking, which comes from complete diversity, we won't be able to embrace change. And that seeps all the way through the organization and out, because the most important thing is people. People matter, and so we need that to be able to thrive.
Great. And just from your kind of experience and your leadership team, are there any measures that Novacroft are taking? So, for example, other firms have given themselves targets amongst themselves to say, by a particular deadline, this is what we're pushing towards. Is there any of that in effect in Novacroft at the moment?
So it's just innate within us.
Okay.
If you like. So we don't have standards that will be X, Y, Z. But what we do have is, I reach out to the whole of my team, and I have around 500 team members. And every week I have conversations, and we want to encourage as many people to thrive. So it's a bit like when I started the business, we started by, in another aspect about how we work, and that work is a big part of our lives, and we need to embrace flexible working. We started that way before flexible working became. It's similar to quality, quality controls, accreditations. It's about having all of these things in your core,
right?
And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And oftentimes, especially when companies scale up and they start growing internationally, some cultures tend to lose that kind of bringing everyone in and having those conversations. And one of the things that I'm quite particular about is, how as companies scale up and grow, they preserve that kind of culture, whether that's flexible working for those that are moms or those that are, fathers perhaps as well, in various dynamics. Very important.
Exactly. And I think one of the things about having a target to achieve, to me, and I'm not saying it's not the right thing to do, but where I come from as a mindset is targets are something that people go toward as something that they need to tick. It doesn't mean that it's ingrained in them the value of it. And for me, it's all about it's about a legacy. It's about helping people recognize there's something amazing in everybody. And if we can unleash that talent, then we can grow as a society. And we absolutely must do that, because we're only talking a decade, 2 decades before, if we're not careful, the future of humanity is at stake. So we've got to embrace humans.
Absolutely. And I think that's quite key, Deborah, moving away from, as you said, just targets as something that the crowd all moves towards, but actually an ingrained value in each of us. And I think that really echoes what this Choose to Challenge campaign and theme is about for this period. Cecilia, welcome. I know we haven't sort of briefly spoken, but I'm someone that has followed you and your work in the last year in particular. And simply because I just saw someone who looks like me, who was doing great things. And that was really inspiring. You know, I'm not in the tech industry or field, but again, I saw someone, a role model. So it's really a privilege to have you and to have this conversation. I'll delve straight into my question. Having looked at your profile, you've worked at established companies, the likes of Morgan Stanley, IBM, and you have had many years of experience. And I'm just going to ask the question, have you come across any inequality throughout your years in industry? And if so, how have you called out any biases, if you have? And if you have not, what are some of the challenges that you have come up against in doing so?
Yes, I think absolutely. People just within your career, you're going to come across situations where you feel marginalized, where you feel it's not fair, where you feel you haven't been treated equally. And for me, it's really been about the mindset is the most important thing. I think you need to have my mindset has always been, you know what, the truth is always going to be revealed to you. And that's a blessing. You need to be grateful for that because you've been shown a situation where it's like, okay, now I'm going to figure out how I'm going to navigate this and how and what I'm going to do next. So one, it's immediately being grateful that, okay, this has been shown to me. That's number one. And I think that that's taught me, one, I don't ever want to treat anybody like this and make somebody feel what I'm feeling at the moment. And then two, it definitely reaffirms for me my boundaries and what I won't tolerate and how I want to be treated, not only in the workplace, but anywhere really. I think it's more about your reaction. For me, it was, I'm going to act in a manner where it's dignified and in a way where it's authentic for me. So,
Okay.
and also not getting distracted, eyes on the prize. I want to sort of get on with what I was going to get on with. And I think also, most importantly, it just reinforced for me that I was going to use my platforms in a way where it was going to uplift and showcase those that deserve to be recognized and perhaps aren't having a light shone on them. And it really inspired me to create different programs, such as Avoiding Career Krakatoa. That's a program that I started, a webinar series where we discuss how to handle toxic work environments. And because so many people just don't understand as employees what their rights are. And I really wanted to, going through those experiences, offer an opportunity where it's a resource for people to understand how to protect themselves.
Absolutely. And I think you've raised a really good point there. I come from a generation of, my mum's a nurse, my aunt's a nurse, my grandma was a nurse. I did something completely different by going into the world of business.
Yeah.
I just, walked in, started my first day at work. This is your desk. Here's a laptop. Start work. But actually, majority of that work isn't what I do when I'm sat in front of my laptop answering emails or in meetings. It's the culture, it's the interactions, it's the day-to-day. And I think actually the platform that you've mentioned is really important, just to have a space to actually ask, I'm having this experience at work. I don't quite know if I'm navigating this accurately. And I'm sure many of us can attest to maybe having similar experiences. I see a couple of nods as well. So we're all welcome to comment if any.
It's so true, because sometimes you're going through an experience and you don't have anybody around you in the immediate workplace that you can bounce, the ideas off. So you're thinking, well, maybe this is normal, or maybe I should just deal with it. But that's going to have its own negative impacts over a while in terms of not addressing it. That'll manifest itself in other ways. So through avoiding career Krakatoa, they're going through those experiences. And that's why I get back to the be grateful. In the moment, you're like, what is this? But be grateful, because if I didn't go through those experiences, it wouldn't have pushed me to create platforms such as this, where people understand how to navigate those situations in a way that works for them. I learned to just stop trying so hard for people that don't care. And also, your value does not decrease because somebody can't see your worth. And I think that it's about being in that community where you're able to share your stories, hear the stories of others. And it's like, it's not just me. Okay, this is how, now I know multiple options that I can take in order to get through this and continue to thrive in my career.
I think I really would echo that, Cecilia. The mindset piece is so important. And I think just stepping beyond that, over and above your skills and experience in the workplace, you really need to understand how to navigate bias, how to navigate the network space to really get the best out of your career. So that's what, in terms of networking, really knowing how to leverage your brand and build a great brand, as well as seeking out sponsorship and mentors in the workplace. I think coupled with your skills and experience, where we will be able to really push the diversity piece and enable and facilitate people to really have great careers in the tech space.
Could I just interject as well, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, of course.
One of the things that so in my early career, having struggled with dyslexia at school, I found it incredibly difficult. And I always felt inside that was never quite good enough. And when I started my career, I started on that basis, and I struggled, and I was in a toxic environment, and I worked really hard. Whenever there was something happening, I would research it, I would know it inside out so that I could participate effectively. I was various things, humiliation and shame that you get from different things. And it occurred to me, a penny dropped one day, that actually that I need to embrace my dyslexia, because it actually gives me a winning card, because I can see things differently. And it's a shame for other people that don't have that, isn't it? And to say, we have a uniqueness. Each one of us has a uniqueness. And that day, I don't know what it was, it just made me go, what am I doing? And it changed how I saw things. And, that's enabled me to thrive and working with others, and to move away from toxic situations. It's disgraceful.
Yeah, and I think that's where politics in different organisations really needs to be called out, and we need to understand the politics of, the corporate space, and enabling people, especially women coming into the industry, to understand those pieces is just the final piece to the puzzle on top of their skills and experience that they bring to the table.
And sometimes people are so on this hamster wheel, I call it, where you're busy, you're trying to get through the day, you're dealing with your day-to-day stuff, family, everything like that, and you're just on. So, and then you're in this toxic work environment, and constantly these different things are being thrown at you each day, and each day it's just chipping away at your soul. And I've seen it where incredibly capable and confident individuals are dealing in an environment where it's almost like you don't even realize how toxic it is until you get out of it. You don't even realize how toxic it is until you start to discuss it with other people. But then it's like, okay, well, what do I do about it in a way where it's going to work for me? I can get on with my career, and I'm not going to sort of lose focus in terms of what I want to do and where I want to go. And that's why this is so important, because people need to understand how they need to do battle in the workplace. And it wasn't until going through these experiences and having the lessons that I've learned over the years, it's like, well, what am I going to do about this now? And I think that's a key thing. Although we go through these experiences, you have to lift as you rise. I love that saying, where you need to think about what you've been through and how am I going to use that experience and those lessons, not just for myself, but to help those that are going to be going through the same thing. So that's why I'm just so passionate about the webinar series, because it's just something where I feel like so many people need this. So many people need this type of guidance. And it's something where you can take those experiences and use it as a way to help others.
And that's why I think that as a leader, it's a responsibility for us to reach out to everybody. And, you know, in my organization, across the organization, I can talk to everybody in the organization in a way which is just a human way, not about statistics and what the business is doing, but just in a human way to connect. And through that, more and more people contact me to talk about things. And that's good, because that helps. If there was any problems, we can address them. And that's really important. And the other thing I would say, which often happens, is if a door opens, don't stand in your own way. That's a really important thing. Your inner voice can quite often tell you, as I know myself, that actually you're not worthy for that. Just get in there and get through that door and seize the opportunity.
Yeah, I've thought about making bracelets actually. What would a straight white male do? Would he avoid that opportunity? If there's a door open for him, he's going to go through. Just think of like the most generic. I think of the American swaggery dude, techie bro. You know, he gets an opportunity. He's like, hell yeah, I earned this, and he's straight in there. And that's what we need to be for ourselves.
Agreed. I've got that image now, Holly.
Absolutely. I'm going to move on to my next set of questions. That was a really insightful session, actually. And as someone who is in the workplace myself, and you know, I'm 6 years in, and I've had really great opportunities, really great experiences, but I think there was that initial shock of, call it workplace politics and culture. And I think these conversations are important. And I'm glad that, you know, this particular webinar is actually recorded so people could come back as a reference point. And it, you know, for me, this is an active step towards that choosing to challenge agenda. You know, us sharing these stories, as Cecilia mentioned, storytelling is so powerful. You know, if I go back to my reference, the pattern that I see in my family is simply because my grandma told my mom and my auntie that this is the best way to navigate your career, and they went into nursing. You know, if I hear something different from a Mandy, a Debra, and many others, oh, actually, let's have a conversation, let's navigate your career. The shape of who I can potentially become in the next 10, 15 plus years is starting to take a completely different path just from these conversations. So again, very vital. Mandy, I'm going to move on to you. What motivated you to enter into the technology space? Not many women embark on, you know, that field and that career. Did you sort of fall into it, or was there a passion and a drive there?
Sure, thanks, Faith. No, it was an intentional move. I mean, I've been in technology now for 25 years, worked in many global organizations, and I started off as a hands-on technician, crawling around under servers, fixing desktops, and invariably working shift work with 10, 12 men, you know, on a rotational basis, and having to deal with the inequalities in that space. But I think for me, it was very much about the personality at that time. You had to have the resilience about you to actually be able to stand up to those conversations in that space, and, you know, the robustness of how the men would operate. But that's me. And I think, Faith, what I saw is that a lot of women don't have that same personality, whether you call it imposter syndrome, whether you call it confidence issues. And I think until you start to really address some of those problems, some of the ladies that we see coming up behind us are going to struggle to get into those spaces. Why did I fall into technology? Because I saw it as a real instrument for change. And I think nowadays you can see that it commands and, you know, is the heart of every organization. And I think even back then I saw that I can really make some change in this space. And it was exciting, right? All the shiny stuff, all the new technology, being able to fix things is really what spurred me on into tech. And I've not regretted it. Moving on from the hands-on tech, I then went into leadership, and I've been at a senior level for a number of years now. I currently work for City and Guilds as their head of IT service. So I think for women coming up behind us, it's about knowing that there are many different routes into technology and many things you can do once you're within it. You do not have to be a hands-on technician. You do not have to manage databases. You can manage, you can lead. And I think that's what's so invigorating about it, is that it's so diverse in terms of what you can do.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Thank you, Mandy. You mentioned something that's quite thought-provoking, and that's about the next generation of women entering the industry and coming up, and having this sort of resilient personality, and some not being able to perhaps demonstrate that, whether that's, you know, a mindset, or whether that's, you know, perhaps something that they've told themselves, as briefly mentioned. Can we delve more into that? You know, is it, we've often heard the terms on many of these panels around the imposter syndrome. You know, is this real, or is it perceived? Has anyone sort of come across?
I choose the challenge. I mean, at the end of the day, it is just fear, right? We have fear of different things, whether that is speaking up in environments we're not used to, really working alongside individuals we're not accustomed to. So imposter syndrome, yeah, I think it happens, and it affects everybody at different levels of your career. And no matter who you are, I think even, you know, leaders, great state leaders have imposter syndrome. But it's really recognizing where you feel most challenged, and then working to actually address that. So if you feel challenged in speaking engagements, then, you know, work to actually address what is triggering those feelings and emotions. And then as you move forward, push through the fear, you will find that it starts to become easier and easier over time. I'm no great speaker or orator. I have worked on that element of my career, and hopefully I'm sort of getting there. But don't expect the imposter syndrome to go. It will minimize. But I think there's definitely work that we all need to do in that space. And I would just encourage any young women watching this to do. And that's why I work with universities. I've done some work with Lloyds Bank in terms of helping back women into STEM. And I think it's really important, the youngsters that are coming through, that we really encourage them. STEM is a space for them.
Great. Any other comments?
I think in terms of imposter syndrome, when I think about it, you know, so many times we come from, you know, so many times it really centers around our mindset in so many ways. And that's why resilience and mindset is something that I think is always important for us to keep in mind, because when I think back on just in terms of my experience, you know, similar to you, Faith, you know, I come from a family where, you know, everybody worked in hospital before me. So for me to think, you know, all of a sudden that, you know, I start off my career on Wall Street, on a trading floor, you know, 20 years ago, there's nobody that looked like me. And, you know, and that alone, those experiences, not seeing somebody that looks like you, not, you know, coming from, you know, having self-limiting beliefs from when we were children, that we take and that we grow, and that comes a part of just how we believe, and hence comes into how we behave and react to certain things. And I think that's when I get back to the point about, you know, when you do go through times that do challenge you, and when you do go through things where it feels unjust, it feels like you were just about to have those moments where you were just about to explode, you know, look at it, going through it. It's difficult. It's stressful. You're wondering, why in the world is this happening to me? But that's what builds up the resistance, the resilience in you. That's what builds up the ability to understand that you're going through these journeys and you're going through these challenges. And I've been through so many of them over my career. But let me tell you, by going through those experiences and by going through those challenges, there is no imposter syndrome, because I know I earned my spot. I know I earned that seat at the table. And it doesn't even have to be corporate experience. It could be just life stuff that you're going through. So reflect on all those experiences that you have been through, where there has been challenge and you got through on the other side, because that shows you. And nobody can challenge you in terms of whether or not you belong somewhere, and you certainly won't be challenging yourself.
And I found that, you know, as humans, life is fragile, isn't it? And you're absolutely right. Imposter syndrome can come at all sorts of different ways at different times in our lives, and it can be super amazing, as you said, you know, running states and things like that. I think what it is actually taking a moment to just say, what is my inner voice telling me? And what just triggered that feeling of, oh, I don't belong here, or that, you know, stepping back from it and saying, what is that? And actually saying, that's just the kind of, if I was in the Starship Enterprise, that's just the health and safety inspector saying to me, oh, be careful, you might something bad might happen. Well, actually, nothing's bad's going to happen. If we're just ourselves, it's okay, because we're brilliant and we're unique and we're amazing. And so kind of say, okay, I'm now the captain of this ship. I'm okay. We're going to do this.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies, for that. We're going to move on. I can see some questions have started actually coming into the chat. So I'll quickly buzz through my questions, and then, of course, we will give time to the audience to ask away during the last segment. Holly, I'm going to move on to you. As mentioned earlier, I have followed you in the last week or so on your various social media platforms. And personally, I love what you've got to say, and I think your voice and your tone on your platforms, really, you are saying what many people are thinking, but perhaps are not bold enough to say. So kudos to you. And for anyone who doesn't follow Holly, I would strongly recommend, and of course all our panelists. But if you want quite a candid and honest approach to some of these issues we're discussing, then for me, it's definitely she's definitely someone worth listening to. So my question to you, Holly, as someone with such a strong following on various platforms. Oh, there's a cat there. Hello.
Yes, I have 6 cats here. I run a rescue, so you will see random cats. Sorry.
So again, just to plug that, if anyone is looking for a rescue cat, also go to Harvey. As someone with a strong following on social media platforms, how effective have you found Twitter, Instagram, and many others in actually addressing and challenging some of these issues? As mentioned, we've had last year the rise of Black Lives Matter and that movement, people blacking out their various pages and doing different things. Celebrities were involved, politicians, are these things real? Do they actually work? Are they just, a hype and a fad, and 2 weeks later we've moved on to something else? How have you found it as someone who actively engages in that?
Well, I think it's a very, very mixed blessing, and I think that has never been clearer than it has this week, because here in the UK, and especially where I live in Clapham, we've had in the news, there's been this horrendous story about this woman who's gone missing, and just the conversation around that has been absolutely shocking in terms of the kind of gender divide. And so I've been talking about it because she's gone missing from literally around the corner from where I live, and she was wearing walking clothes. It was the middle of the day. She could not possibly be blamed, you would think, for vanishing. And it turns out that a policeman took her as well, which, understandably, a lot of Black people are saying, we told you, you can't trust those guys. And so I've been talking about it quite a lot on my Twitter, just because I don't think some men understand the kind of visceral fear and sort of terror just of going about your life as a woman sometimes. And I was trying to get that across. I wasn't trying to be controversial. I wasn't trying to kick anything off. This is what happens. You just kind of type in without really thinking. You just sort of say it like you'd say it to a friend. And then suddenly all this abuse pours in, and you're like, oh, okay, have I upset some people? So it's still going now. Yesterday was rape threats, death threats, all the robots were in my mentions, everybody. So it's unfortunate, I think, that women who speak up about stuff like this, and anybody who speaks up about particularly marginalized groups, so it's women, it's people of color, it's queer people, there's anybody that doesn't fit the sort of, again, straight white male mold, will get more abuse just purely by sticking their head above the parapet. And that sucks. And I hate that people will see us talking about it and then try and do it themselves and then just attract a load of abuse. But it's important to say that as humans, I think we automatically take negative stuff more strongly than positive stuff. And the fact is, numbers wise, the positive responses I got were so many more than the negative ones. I mean, there's probably one troll for every 25 people responding positively, but because, your brain's like wired to sort of worry about there's a tiger on the savannah, you kind of take this bad stuff more seriously. It's so important to remember that at the same time you are speaking to so many people who maybe for whatever reason can't speak out. You know, I was talking about an experience that I had. Not everybody can do that. I mean, it's people who don't know how to word it, perhaps. Quite a few people said, like, I've been feeling exactly this, but I didn't really know how to express it. There's lots and lots of men have said that they've learnt from sort of reading my thread on it and just my ranty thoughts, you know, have kind of considered it in a way that they hadn't before. So I think, although it does have some horrible downsides, and I really don't want to minimize the downsides, because the first time you get a death threat or a rape threat is horrendous. After 10 years or so, you're just like, oh, it's Wednesday. I've heard that one 3 times today already. What else you got? It doesn't bother me anymore, but like the first time you get it, it is awful. But having said that, when you get past that to all the people who are saying amazing things and insightful things and helping you develop your opinion and kind of seeing how you're helping to shape other people's opinions and help them express what they've been trying to say, I think that is so valuable and so worthwhile. And that's why I stick with social media after all of the horrible stuff.
Cecilia, you're also someone who, as I mentioned, I actually came across your profile on social media with your brands and the various things that you're doing in the tech space. Is it an effective platform to drive change?
I think so, because what I've used my social media platforms for is to definitely showcase, I really want to use to showcase what other people are doing in the tech space, in the entrepreneurial space, especially women. And I also wanted to use it as a way to inspire people. So many times people, and I've been that person where you get in the morning, you know, you're at your desk, you're about to start your day, you're going through your Instagram or you're checking your LinkedIn and you're scrolling through, and it's so nice to see content that is inspiring and that is or that gives you some knowledge about something that you weren't even considering or that you didn't know about or that you found was helpful. So that's really how I choose to use my social media platforms, to really uplift other people, shine a light on others, and also just to get inspirational content out there, which especially now it's something that everybody needs.
It's so nice to hear you say that about lifting up other people and using your platform to help other people and shine a light on them, because I think maybe this is controversial, but in my experience there seems to be 2 camps of women in tech, and there's the ones who do that and kind of lift everybody up and want to help everybody, and there's the ones who are like, well, I fought really hard and I had a really bad time, so you have to pay your dues, you have to go through this as well, it's part of the process. And it's interesting to see kind of how different people respond. And I love to see women like you helping other women and holding us all up. And I would like to see more. I wish everybody did that.
You know, I agree. I think it's a really interesting debate, right? Because, yeah, there is a tale of 2 halves. But I think what social media does for us is it closes a gap. It closes a gap on the global landscape, because it is so much easier to reach out to people across the globe and to have forums like this, right, for like-minded people to come together on all of those great initiatives. And also it makes things more accessible in terms of knowledge, in terms of accessing people, in terms of getting into the job industry. It's no longer, you know, a closed industry of a few recruiters. You can seek out job opportunities across social media. When I'm coaching around the corporate space of getting into new roles, that's what I encourage my clients to do, to really use social media to their benefit and make sure they are building a huge network across social media. So I think that's where the benefit lies. But yeah, it can be really quite toxic in places, but it's making sure that you are networking effectively across social media and taking the good out of it.
Absolutely, and you're so right. One of the main things that I find so valuable about social media is the women's networks that I have. So I mean, there's private Facebook groups, there's WhatsApp groups, there's kind of just women who know each other and share stuff. So I mean, for example, just this week I've had a couple of DMs about abusive men and just kind of saying, just so you know, this really prominent guy assaulted me, and I don't know what to do about it. And so we have this wonderful whisper network where we all tell each other, and it's not out in public and it's not something that you're going to see and that anybody's going to be able to kick off about. We all just tell each other and just say, by the way, this guy, just don't be alone in a lift with this guy, you know. And that is so valuable, and it has saved me many times, not only from things like sexual harassment, but also from taking jobs at toxic companies. I mean, Monday, International Women's Day, was unbelievable because my inbox was absolutely flooded with every tech company in the world being like, we've hired some women, look at us, aren't we great? Like, here's a picture of one woman in our engineering department, and, you know, out of shot are the 30 odd white dudes. And at the same time, I've got all my friends in tech, some of whom work at those very same companies, telling me about the sexism, the marginalization, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, the stuff that doesn't get a press release. I think it's just so important that we all keep talking to each other and telling each other about this stuff, because how else are we going to know?
Yeah, and I think to apologies, Deborah, over to you.
I was just going to say, I think it is in life very easy to feel alone, and it's a horrible feeling. And, you know, for me, for all of us, it is about reaching out to others to help. And I think social media plays a part in that. Personally, I like to speak to people, so through social media to speak to people, and it would be amazing, you know, across the globe, for the future of humanity. There are some amazing people in the world, and to have a strong voice there to encourage children, young people, and adults to come together to create that strength to show the way would be amazing. And I think sometimes the challenge, I mean, it's been described here, the challenge with social media is that it can be a bit of a scary place to be. And if you already feel alone, and then you get those messages, or you feel isolated, you know, I think it's challenging. And you know, maybe there's room for a platform that actually embraces positive approaches to well-being and moving forward as a united globe for the future of humanity.
Shall we just build a women-only social network?
You could say that, but I would say, Holly, there's beauty and amazing people around the world.
I don't disagree whatsoever, but I mean, I'm just saying that all the other social networks have got both. So
I agree, but I know it was
conversation here in the UK this week has been about a curfew for men because of the woman that went missing. So I just wondered if it was if there was a similar thing. I don't really think we should do that.
I suppose what I would say is just, I know it was very tongue-in-cheek, but yeah, we on this whole agenda about getting women into tech and how we build our communities into the tech space, it's really a joined up agenda, right? We should all be inclusive in this conversation, because when you're looking at organizations in terms of their leadership, they may be predominantly men, but we need those men to help to open doors for us and to really look down and say, well, look, we need to help female, you know, ladies into this space, those that are underrepresented. So we need this to be a joined up conversation for and organizations to really buy into that, which I think is, and it's really important. Since Lloyds Bank recently published their gender gap and their diversity figures, for organizations to do things like that across social media, I think it's really powerful.
Absolutely, yeah, you're completely right. And the social media has been amazing for that, for me and for lots of other women. Just, I guess if you're a man in a majority male company, like, it's one of the ways that people can reach you in a way that we never used to be able to. Like, you know, if there's a guy who's high up at Google or Samsung or wherever, you know, you can follow him on Twitter and you can reply to what he's saying. It's not, there's no barrier there. There's nothing to stop you other than logging into Twitter and being like, dear God, what now? But yeah, I've met lots of amazing men on Twitter and Instagram, and I think pretty much all of the most amazing experiences of my life have come via social media. So I absolutely wouldn't change it. And if you can get through the bad bits, it's so worth it.
And just moving on from our personal social media experiences, I'll round up with this question on this particular topic. What can brands do, especially startup brands, to engage more women in technology? And by that, I mean actually the use of technology, not just the, you know, careers in technology, but as a lifestyle. You know, we're moving into a generation, if we look at the generation Z, the generation after mine, you know, they've all sort of grown up around gadgets, and that's kind of the way we're going. Anyone want to share what brands should be doing? You know, we've had on this platform throughout the week various business owners, small business owners, startups and founders. What can they be doing to get more women using technology?
I think it's about excitement of the possibilities. So this kind of dovetails into encouraging more, for instance, more women to join the STEM space, because there's a world out there, you know, in fourth industrial revolution and beyond, that we can do amazing things with technology to change climate change, to impact our lives for good. And so I think for brands, it's probably looking at what does the future hold? Where are they aiming for? And what value will they be providing to society to encourage us now to be wanting to get on board with them? You know, there's a challenge here of, you know, another gadget. We were talking earlier in the week about mobile phones, and I remember a decade ago, or maybe 15 years ago, I was so excited about the latest mobile phone. Now they're probably 10 times more expensive, and you just take them for granted because they're just there. The excitement comes from what value will it give to society? And we're looking for real things, because the future of humanity is at stake. The globe is at stake. We have to do something about it. So brands need to harness that.
I agree.
I think women women are already so much have a huge percentage of just consumers of technology. So I think that's, you know, definitely the case. I think if anything, definitely more brands need to, in how they develop their technology products, consider, you know, women as their consumers. I think that's one. I think also it's really about expanding the definition of what it means to be a woman in tech. This is something that with Tech Women Today, I strive to do. It's so you don't have to be a coder. You don't have to be a programmer. You can be somebody, you don't even have to work at a technology company per se. You could be somebody who you can work in fashion and have a career in tech. You can work in art, healthcare, education, and have a digital type of a career, a technology career. So I think that's one thing. Once we see women in all these different spaces and we expand the definition of what that means around tech, I think that it naturally will open the doors for more women to be considered within that world of tech, whether you're working actively in it or a consumer of a particular product or service of technology.
Yeah, great point, Cecilia. Great. Definitely. I would say as well, engaging our youngsters at an earlier stage. I know obviously our young people are really involved in using their apps and their phones, etc. But I think it's about making it exciting for the youngsters in terms of maybe engineering apps and different ways that you can get them more interested in STEM technology and how it works in the workplace. So what that app looks like, I don't know, but I'd probably encourage some of those big organizations to start to focus on that. How can we get the interest of those really young people into using technology that is related to STEM industries? So that's probably where I'd approach it from.
I also think that as I sort of grown in age and experience, is that you begin to realise that actually you can make a big difference in shaping how we live. And if I'd known that when I was 20, I might have actually embraced that sooner. So I think there's a part to play here to say, you know, as you just said, Mandy, if we can inspire future engineers to embrace that sooner, then imagine what they could do. I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, and in terms of brands and what they can do, I think it can be so simple. It can be so much simpler than I think a lot of them think. I quite often get people coming to me being like, how do I hire women for my company? And then you look at their job ad and it's like, rockstar coder wanted, must work 24 hours a day, never gets a day off, hope you don't have any responsibilities. And it's like, oh my God, like women are not going to respond to this. You have to bear in mind that still women do the majority of the childcare and do the majority of the cleaning statistically at home. They have more on than men do. That's just the numbers, you know, and they're not going to respond to things like that. They want to hear about, you know, how well they're going to be treated. They want to hear about what the culture's like. They want to hear about what the job is like, not kind of all this horrible imposter syndrome tweaking stuff about how amazing you have to be. And also imagery. God, for goodness sake, imagery. Can we get away from men in hoodies on laptops, please? And and weird, like, sexy lady cyborgs. What is up with those? Like, I keep seeing every time there's like a robot, you know, the iRobot type things that people use the stock images. They're always busty and they've got these tiny little waist. Now, I am a queer woman. I love a sexy woman as much as the next person. However, there's a time and a place. That is not it.
Brilliant. I will round up. We've got some questions from the audience, but I had two questions in particular. This one is to Cecilia. Just lost my bearings. There is a rise of technology startups, but statistically, a lot of startups fail before they even launch into various endeavors. One of the reasons being funding. What advice can you give to any female entrepreneurs who perhaps have started something, embarked on a venture and failed, and they're maybe skeptical about starting back up again? What advice could you give to those that group?
Yeah, I think, especially, you know, being the CEO of Hyve Dynamics, so technology startup. But before then, you know, I've had so many experiences where it hasn't gone as what I've expected. So one, failure is the greatest teacher. And don't be afraid, because I remember my mother always saying to me, are you going to live your fears or are you going to live your dreams? I think in terms of advice I would have for people, it really centers around two areas. Around one, being future-proofing your business and being focused. So in terms of future-proofing, there's so many times where people want to cut corners or think, well, I don't need that right now. But future-proofing really establishes the mindset of proactively planning, contingency planning, managing risk, and really starting to identify where you have blind spots. You must think about your corporate structure, your share structure. So having a share structure in place that's going to be attractive for future investors. Shareholder agreements and founders agreements. Usually everything's great in the beginning, but having a structure in place really protects the business. And usually in the first year, someone in the founding team leaves for whatever reason. So it's important to have a structure in place that's going to protect the business. I think also your financials, you need to stay lean. So many people, they grow too big too soon, and really it hurts the business. And I think you need to ensure that you have contingency budget is always key. To focus, you need to have laser focus. You can't have this, what I call peanut butter style of spreading across every market and you can serve every type of client. So you need to clearly define your target market. You need to define the road to revenue for that target market and really define specific milestones and measurable targets for success that really keep you honest. There's so many other things that I think people can really do in terms of making sure that you feel that you don't have that apprehension and that fear that comes from when you failed previously. I've never met a successful person that's had an easy path. And oftentimes things don't go as quickly as what we want them to do, but that wait, it's not punishment, it's preparation. That's what I've learned over the years. And it's really about making sure that, although your path may be difficult, it's usually because you have a higher calling. So I say embrace the wait, be grateful for the time that it takes for you to get there, and don't let any previous experiences stop you from getting to your destiny.
Brilliant. Love that.
I'd absolutely agree with what you've just said, Celia. And I'd also say that if you're passionate about something, you've got that energy, will, and determination, you've got a lot on top of what you said. And I think where I would start is really looking at a point in the future. So if we're talking 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, and looking at it from a point of view of what does that future look like? Pick a day, pick a time, a year, and say, where am I? What's important to me? What have I achieved? What have I overcome? Who's with me? And putting some real picture around that as something that's really important to you. And that will have come from where you are now in your life in terms of what you want to move away from, what do you want to move toward. And if you can really understand that picture and why it matters to you, that's going to give you, as well as what Celia said, the resilience to and the passion to say, I'm going for that. Your picture may change in time, but it really does help you understand what you need to do and who you need to reach out to, what kind of funding you might need, etc. And whether those opportunities that you're seeing, are they strong enough? Don't let people in my journey have come along and said, oh, no, you've not got it right, you need to do it like this, or perhaps you ought to be spending your money on this. Well, you can listen to that kind of thing. Somebody actually said to me once, yeah, you've done really well, and you'll be able to go out and buy some shoes now. Who says that? But you have to really embrace these things and say, okay, this is right. I'll do the logic of it. There's a real opportunity there. I'm the uniqueness of what I have within my organization, my undercover superheroes in my team. What can we do to embrace that opportunity? And if you believe it, you can make it happen, and nothing can stand in your way.
Absolutely. Great. So we are entering the last 10 minutes of the session, and I'd like to end it slightly differently. We will go to the audience questions, and then we'll come back to what I'm going to call life after the hashtag. And for me, that's for all of us to think about one thing based on this conversation we've had today that we choose to challenge. So I will start, and then I will give everyone a minute to go. So I'll wait for us to sort of have a think. I'm sure some of us perhaps have already concluded, but I'll just head over to the comments. And I can see a question here from Anita. Thank you, ladies, for this candid and brave conversation on challenging work situations and live tests. What techniques do you use to reclaim your confidence and professional value?
Would you like me to start? So, as I said earlier, we're fragile as humans, and often I find actually changing the space that you're in, so a sort of physical thing. If I'm not right about something, I might actually go for a walk and actually remember that there's fresh air and I'm a small thing in on a globe, and actually say, what is it about this thing? What's causing it? And again, stepping out of it and looking in on it. Imagine you're in a helicopter looking at yourself and what is it about, and unpicking it and then putting it back together. And I've had some huge challenges in my life. And I think it is to remember life's a journey, and it's not a destination. It's about connecting. It's about doing something great as you can and overcoming those. What are those things? What is it? Is it something that you've created inside yourself that's not the truth? If it's a fact, then you can do something about it. If it's an internal, then you can also do something about it. In fact, it's actually easier because you can actually unpick that and look at it and talk to somebody about it. And if you can't talk to somebody about it, do this. Imagine that you've got 3 people in a room. One of them is an amazing comedian or somebody that always makes you laugh. One of them is that kind of learned person. And the other one is somebody you've never met, a stranger. And just tell them and get their opinions on what they'd say. That will help you come up with some ideas.
I agree with all of that. I think, for example, with avoiding career Krakatoa, we teach people where it's like you need to build your advisory board, because the reality is no matter what stage you are in your career, whatever you're doing, people are going to come for you, whether it's right or wrong or anything. So one, you need to have your people who know you, who are not only going to tell you how great you are all the time, but who are going to check you also when you need a bit of a reality check at times. But I think that that's important, because I remember there was like several years ago, it was a while ago actually, but I was at a point in my career where I remember I was all excited. I just gotten this new promotion, and there was another more senior female person within the organization, and I figured there was a bit of tension there, and I thought, you know what, I want to address this. So sat down, I was like, you know what, I really think that I really want to see if there's something we can do to, sort of mend our relationship. And I remember she looked at me and she goes, well, I don't really see the value of what you do. I was like, she did not just say that to me. And so then, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I just got promoted. We have the same boss now. I got a high manager effectiveness rating on my last employer's review. So what are you talking about? So that's number one. You've got to have that within yourself in terms of going back with facts when somebody tries to come to you with some craziness. Because in the words of my mother, the devil is a liar. And then the other thing is that you need to make sure that you have your advisory board of people that you can go to, your tribe, if you will, and say, this just happened. And one, you get that feedback in terms of, okay, yeah, that's crazy. And then two, it'll also, people will give you, okay, well, let go of the emotion. Here's how to handle it moving forward. And I think that's what you need. So I think it's really about coming up with your advisory board of people who will not only, build you up, but they'll also, make sure that they put forth solutions for how to address problems, which will only help you succeed in how you navigate situations, which will only continue to build your confidence as you move forward.
But another thing with that is we all have backstories, don't we? So if it's two people, three, whatever it is in this scenario where you've got two people and you've got that situation you've just described, Cecilia. Sorry. Often now I find myself looking over the top of it and saying, I wonder what's behind that. So often people attack in various ways because something's going on inside them. And actually stepping out of that for a moment and looking at what might be causing it also is quite helpful as well, to navigate something that works for both. Because usually when people say things like that, it's because, feeling that they're going to be trapped, that somebody's coming up that's going to be a predator, if you like.
True.
So,
yeah, and I think there's some great comments. And I think just moving on from that advisory board piece, Cecilia, it's about sponsorship. So if you're talking about your professional value, how can you really get that out there into the corporate space that you're operating in? So if you've got a sponsor who can speak up for you in the right rooms, open the right doors, that person is going to actually speak to your value and really spread that message really widely. And the other thing is about leaning into your strengths and making sure you know what your strengths are and really developing those and using those to your benefit. And that's when the confidence will really come out. So if you think you can, I don't know, maybe strategy is your thing, maybe data crunching is your thing, really bring that in as a powerful asset that you can own, and then your confidence will come as a result of that.
Great. Holly, anything to add to that final point?
I think the woman who said that to Cecilia, oh my God, firstly, what was she thinking? I think Debra's absolutely right that there was something going on there. She was hyper jealous or something. She was just having a terrible week, I don't know. But she kind of highlighted what I think is quite a good technique to sort of flip your thinking on this kind of thing, where if you might be sort of thinking, oh, you know, I'm hopeless, you know, I haven't got this skill, I haven't got that skill. But if somebody said to you, like, well, you don't belong here, you're not good enough, then you get your defensiveness up and you come back with arguments. You're like, well, hang on, I do belong here because of this and this and this and this, and I've done this, and I sometimes think it through that way in my head, where it's like, sort of just turn it around, and what would I say back to someone who said that to me? And suddenly all the good points come flooding in, and you just remember them again. It's just bring your defensiveness up as a weapon and use it for yourself.
Great. Now we are in the last segment of this panel, and again, I just want to thank all the panelists for a really great conversation, which I've particularly enjoyed, and a lot for most of us to go away and think about. I've certainly been challenged in how I approach some of the dynamics that I have in the workplace. So thank you for this candid and very open conversations. I will now close off with asking everyone just to say the one thing that they choose to challenge, whether that's in their personal lives, in the workplace, in the companies they lead, in their industry. So I will begin with my first challenge. I've got many, and I've had many to think about this week, but I choose to challenge the political dynamics in my workplace. I choose to challenge what is the things that I'm perhaps ignorant about and don't know, and I'm actually going to start asking, because I think I've learned certainly from Mandy and Cecilia, there can be this notion of, you know, I've never been in this space before, and therefore this is just what happens. So I'm going to stop doing that and actually begin to ask the right questions to the right people. So that's something I choose to challenge. Anyone next?
I'll go. I choose to challenge toxic workplaces and toxic bosses because I feel that this is such a factor that just can derail so many people's careers and just erode their confidence and just also affect them in terms of their personal development, not only professional. So, and the way I've chosen to do that is to take all the lessons that I've learned and all the, you know, people that I know to create the Avoiding Career Krakatoa. And so the webinar series that I have, where I want to start to level the playing field and not just make it certain people could get access to certain information, and just make sure that it's a sort of, you know, starting to build a community where there's real talk about, you know, how to challenge these difficult situations and offer people resources where they can help themselves and not get trapped in a toxic situation that can ultimately derail their personal and professional goals. So I'm challenging toxic workplaces and toxic bosses. I'm coming for you.
Go, Cecilia. Thank you for that. I choose to challenge imposter syndrome because I think it affects so many women at lots of different levels. And the way I choose to do that is to support women coming out through the graduate journey into the workplace and really starting to empower them through my coaching in terms of how they navigate the workplace. I also choose to challenge organizations, right, to step up and to be more inclusive and to really have the honest, transparent conversations that we need to have at the leadership table, to make sure we are inclusive, we are providing the right opportunities, and that we are allowing people to thrive in the workplace. That's me.
Great.
So, oh, sorry, Holly, you're going to go.
No. I was waiting for you.
Okay, so it's a really interesting one, isn't it? So I choose to challenge narrow-mindedness, if you like. I think it's and imposter syndrome, to help people be the best of themselves, to get beyond those. Because if we can do that, if we can help people broaden their minds, reach out more, be the best of themselves and support them in that way, then as a society, we will thrive. I think that's, really a fundamental thing for us. And you're an amazing group, and I really admire all of you. And together with there's an army of us, isn't there, that have we've earned our whatever, we've got the battle scars in life, and actually, although we've learned from those, you shouldn't really have to have the battle scars. You should be able to thrive without them. So we should be getting together and helping others to thrive.
Absolutely.
Okay, I choose to challenge ageism, which I think is something that affects women disproportionately. I think that this attitude that tech in particular has, that youth is the only valuable thing, is completely ridiculous. I think all of us benefit and grow from experience, even if it's not necessarily directly relevant experience, and sometimes actually that's better. I think we need to see older people for what they are, which is very experienced people who've been through lots of situations, seen lots of things before, and can put a new spin on something that you might not have experienced. I hate this kind of fetishizing of being young and single and childless because you can work 24 hours a day and not do anything else. I think if we have more people working less hours and more people with more diverse experience, then we all benefit from that. And so I think ageism is just an absolute killer. It really frustrates me. I think it definitely hits women much, much harder than men. And I would really love to see an end to that.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again, ladies. Thank you for your time once again, and thank you for all that have taken the time out to watch this session. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And one thing that I do hope, with all the pledges that we've made amongst ourselves, if we were to come back and have this conversation in 12 months' time, just to account for one another, how's it going? And I think something that I'm going to do is stay connected with everyone here on this panel and check in and continue the conversation. Exactly that we said we were going to do. So again, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I wish everyone a lovely day for the rest of the summit. I think we've got more conversations coming up this afternoon, so stay tuned, of course, on this platform. And everyone have a great day. Thank you again.